Jack sees darker motives. His book alleges a high-level conspiracy revolving around Anslinger, Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon, the DuPont Chemical Company, and hemp. Before the Civil War, hemp was the nation's second-largest cash crop behind cotton. But while cotton could be processed by machine, slaves were the only cost-effective way to separate the tough hemp fiber from the pulpy core that was used to make paper. When slavery ended after the war, the hemp industry went into decline. The death knell was sounded in the late 1800s when papermakers converted to tree-based pulp.
It meant that you could chop down a forest a lot cheaper than you could pay laborers to manufacture hemp fiber for paper.
Jack hangs his conspiracy angle on events that happened simultaneously with marijuana prohibition. Coincidence number one. A German immigrant invented a machine called the decorticator. This new mechanical processing device was about to bring hemp into the modern industrial age. Popular Mechanics magazine recognized the potential bonanza for American farmers and entrepreneurs. This article heralded a machine that could process hemp quickly and cheaply for the first time in history. Coincidence number two. The DuPont Company in the 30s came out with both a sulfuric acid method for making paper from trees and a new invention called plastic. Jack's book points out that a hemp resurgence would certainly have been a serious threat to DuPont's petrochemical strategies. And finally, there's millionaire financier Andrew Mellon. Mellon was Anslinger's boss, Harry's wife's uncle, and DuPont's banker. Coincidences number 3, 4, and 5.
Don't smoke all of my grass.
The book's credibility got a boost from Jack's discovery of this 14-minute documentary. Supposedly made by the U.S. government 5 years after the Marijuana Tax Act. Its purpose was to encourage farmers to grow outlawed hemp during World War II.
Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. But now, with Philippine and East Indian sources of hemp in the hands of the Japanese, and shipment of jute from India curtailed, American hemp must meet the needs of our Army and Navy, as well as of our industries. In 1942, patriotic farmers, at the government's request, planted 36,000 acres of seed hemp, an increase of several thousand%. The goal for 1943 is 50,000 acres of seed hemp. For to grow hemp legally, you must have a federal registration and tax stamp. This is provided for in your contract. Ask your AAA committeeman or your county agent about it. Don't forget.
Jack often staged public showings of Hemp for Victory to validate his history of the plant. He also used the film as an example of government deception and hypocrisy. But he was stunned one day in 1988 to get a call from a newspaper reporter questioning the authenticity of the film.
Well, Mr. Hare, we went out to check the information, and we found nobody that would corroborate your story, that this movie was even ever made. You said this movie was made by the United States government, this movie Hemp for Victory. That if there would be any evidence that the government ever made such a film, it would be in the Library of Congress, it would be in the Department of Agriculture. It is in neither place.
His reputation on the line, Jack and his friends went on an excursion to Washington, D.C.
We were just determined to find the documentation that made it a credible government movie made by the U.S. government and not made by Jack. We didn't see it as detective work. We just saw it as we were on a mission. We're on a mission from God.
Many others before Jack had searched the Library of Congress for proof of the documentary's existence and found none. In a day of digging, Jack ran into the same lack of evidence.
After deciding to give up, we decided to give it one more try.
In a dusty old book, hidden among clutter in a back room, they found it. The official Library of Congress documentation. Indeed, the film had been made by the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Hemp for victory.
As hemp gained mainstream acceptance in the 90s, so did Jack. His critics became allies.
When Steve Hager became editor of High Times in the late 80s, and he went ahead and just wrote column after column, article after article, month after month in his magazine, and that's really what exploded the idea of hemp. More to the colleges, more to everybody that picked up a High Times now read about hemp.
In 1994, he was honored by the conservative Drug Policy Foundation in Washington.
With his efforts for showing the impact one individual can have on the lives of many others, Jack Herer is awarded the 1994 Robert C. Randall Award for achievement in the field of citizen action.
At the awards dinner, the emperor wore a hemp suit.
That Jack's place in the history of anti-prohibition movement is going to be secured by the simple fact that he, despite everybody's criticisms, everybody thinking he was crazy, that he had the persistence and the temerity to simply keep going on and saying the truth over and over and over again. No matter, it sometimes seems like you have to say the truth many times before anybody hears it.
The Emperor Wears No Clothes is a book that's had an enormous impact in this country on awakening millions of Americans to the fact that the marijuana laws are wrong, that they're based on false premises, that they're racial in nature, and that we need to change them.
The war on marijuana is also a war on the sick and dying. Even after California and 5 other states overwhelmingly approved medical marijuana initiatives in the late 90s, the federal government still plays hardball.
Despite these initiatives, we want to make clear that federal law still applies, and federal officials will continue to apply the law, and DEA officials will review cases, as they have, to determine whether to revoke the registration of any physician who recommends or prescribes so-called Schedule I controlled substances.
This is not a medical initiative. This is a legalization of drugs issue.
The federal government, by classifying marijuana in Schedule I, is saying that it has no medical uses, which is a bald-faced lie because it has 10,000 years in every culture of medical use.
United States policy to the contrary, cannabis has long been esteemed as a safe, effective, and non-addicting medicine. For thousands of years, it was prescribed by the greatest physicians of their day. It was used for dozens of conditions, ranging from migraines, chronic pain, and asthma, to childbirth, muscle spasms, and even depression. Today, it also provides relief for victims of multiple sclerosis, glaucoma, the AIDS wasting syndrome, and nausea induced by chemotherapy.
It's impossible for a human to overdose and die, which is not true of alcohol, nicotine, barbiturates, or morphine. And it's a drug which humans can use under a wide variety of circumstances with safety.